So this lesson is on area, and we're going to first start by reviewing the area of a circle. We may have done this a little bit earlier in class, but we should maybe go over again. But we want to figure out how we get the formula for the area of a circle. Because what's important to understand is area is measured in squares, but the circle is not a square. So how do we figure out how many squares fit into this circle? So one way we can think of this is we can start with the r squared value. So see the little blue square there? R squared is the square that we're going to use to try to figure out the area of that circle. So that kind of reddish orangish circle there. So if I look at the square on the outside of the circle, which is clearly too big, but we can see that the square on the outside, the white square on the outside, there's 4 squares. 4 of those r squares make up that large square. Okay, and that's too big. That's too much area that we want for the circle. So then we can actually think, okay, well, we can underestimate that square by looking at the interior square. Okay, so if I chop up that interior square, I've got 4 half squares in there. And so that the r squared is going to be made up of, the interior square, or the smallest square, is going to be 2r squared. Okay, so I'm going to just shade that, just make sure we're clear on what area we're looking at. I'm going to shade that in purple here. So this interior square, that one there, is going to be made up of 4 half r squareds, or 2r squareds. Okay, so we want to figure out, okay, well, what would be a reasonable area approximation for the circle? Well, if you look at that, I think it's not a stretch to say that that circle is kind of halfway between the small square and the big square. So the area of the large square being 4r squareds, and the area of the square inside is 2r squareds, and we can say that approximately somewhere in between 4 and 2, so we'll say 3r squareds is not a bad estimate for the circle. Okay, it's somewhere, if you kind of look at that area outside the small square and the area inside the big square, those areas aren't too far off. I would maybe say that one's slightly bigger, so it's a little bit more than 3r squareds. So 3r squareds is a reasonable estimate of that area. So the formula for the area of a circle is, from what we've learned before, is pi r squared. And what can we say? Why can we say that pi r squared is a reasonable estimate of the area of a circle? Well, a good reason we can say is, well, pi is approximately 3.14, which is close to our estimate, of 3r squareds. Okay, so that pi r squared is a reasonable, yeah, it makes sense, sure. That's not too bad. And it looks, if we kind of look at it a little bit more closely, if your eyes are seeing what I'm seeing, my eyes are seeing that that inside is a little bit more than the outside, which means that it's going to be a little bit more than 3. Well, that even further justifies pi as a reasonable amount of r squared to fit into that circle.